When you talk about Walden, you're talking about Doomadgee. Home is where my heart is, and this is it here.
430 kilometres from Mount Isa, Doomadgee's home to nearly 1,500 people. It's a small town with a big heart, but that heart is breaking.
Bill was a lovely young woman, looked after her children, never drink or gamble, always there for her children and her husband. And I really loved her.
Noreen's niece died 3 years ago from the entirely preventable rheumatic heart disease. 4 months later, her granddaughter Shakaya succumbed to the same disease.
People doesn't understand how much we love them. The doctors and nurses, they didn't care.
Here in Doomadgee, 40% of the community are babies, kids, teenagers. But locals say far too many of the youth are dying too young.
Doomadgee does not trust the hospital. They will not go to the hospital because they're afraid of themselves dying in there.
The deaths of 3 young women from heart disease within 12 months sparked a coronial inquest. But on the 28th of June, just 2 days before Queensland coroner Nerita Wilson was to hand down her report, another young death in Doomadgee. This time, Barry's 5-month-old grandson, Shakan.
They did checkups on him, told my daughter and my son-in-law he was okay.
But the next day, Shakan was feeling worse.
Continuously vomiting, regurgitating food up and milk and whatnot. Couldn't hold anything down.
With the Royal Flying Doctor Service based an hour away at Mount Isa, they hoped it was an option.
And one of the ladies said, unfortunately, no, because he's not sick enough. Yeah. That was her exact words.
The answer just kept coming back was, no, he's fine. We'll deal with him here.
As Shakan deteriorated further, they rushed him back to Doomadgee Hospital.
When I got there, they was already doing CPR on him, like he was in cardiac arrest by the time I walked from home to the hospital. And, yeah.
Shakan didn't make it.
It doesn't seem like we're important enough to fight so hard for our deaths or our sickness, you know?
The family say they asked for a second opinion on 4 separate occasions and were refused.
That's despite an escalation process known as Ryan's Rule, which was designed to help stop preventable deaths here in Queensland. Did you know about Ryan's Rule?
No, I didn't know what it was until after my son died.
Ryan's Rule was introduced 10 years ago after the preventable death of 2-year-old Ryan Saunders in Rockhampton. Under the rule, family members, guardians and patients can request an immediate clinical review if dissatisfied with treatment.
I've never seen it in the hospital here in Doomadgee.
When the coroner handed down her findings, one of the 19 recommendations was to consider adapting and promoting Ryan's Rule for First Nations people. Among the findings, Indigenous Queenslanders are 582 times more likely to acquire rheumatic heart disease than non-Indigenous people, and that a lack of cultural competency and institutional racism at Doomadgee Hospital played a part in the deaths of 3 young women.
What does that tell you about the health system?
No good. They look at white people better than Aboriginal people. Back during the 70s, 80s and 90s and all that, we probably would have about 3 or 4 deaths in a year. But now it's about 3 or 4 deaths in a month.
At the cemetery, we see the true impact. Martin Evans' niece Betty was just 18 when she died of heart disease. Her death was one of 3 investigated by the coroner. He says a local community health service instructed her to walk to hospital despite suffering chest pain.
By the time they got her into the emergency room, she collapsed.
They are not only failing adults, they're failing babies, toddlers.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Little children.
As Barry's family waits for relatives to arrive for his grandson's funeral, they seek solace here.
We went out and to just gather our thoughts, and the best way we do it is go out on country.
Emma's still struggling 3 weeks after her son's death.
I just don't know how to put it into words, really. I'm just finding it a bit hard to.
As First Nations people, the family hunt turtles and later a bull, food for the wake. Kids play under the stars, and for just a few moments, everyone is at peace. But on the way home, an emergency. Barry's 3-year-old granddaughter is having a seizure in the car ahead. We're fortunate to have a satellite phone with us.
Ambulance, what's the town or suburb of the emergency?
We're about 10 kilometres out from Doomadgee and one of the kids is having a seizure. We're on the satellite phone and I just thought I'd call ahead and see if we can have the hospital ready.
All right. Well, I've organised that help.
Thanks very much.
No worries.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
To their credit though, when we arrived, all of the staff were ready, prepared, and since then have been quite thorough.
They were there ready to deal with this little baby. Now, I've lived here 57 years and all my life I've never ever seen them react in that manner.
Fortunately, Shalane is okay, but will need follow-up scans later this month. However, scepticism remains and it isn't limited to the health service.
We're not first-class people and we're certainly not second-class people. We're pretty much lower than that, and that attitude needs to change from hospital and the police because it doesn't work.
Barry's angry with the police response when his son-in-law kicked a hospital bin after his baby died.
Within the few minutes, the police were down there and they were out to arrest him.
Troy Fraser is CEO of Doomadgee Council. The mayor was sick the morning of our interview, so Troy stepped up to talk healthcare.
These things are still happening, so there's obviously something wrong with the system.
Just days later as we leave town, we hear the mayor died after experiencing chest pains. He was only 47.
Community they got voices, and those voices need to be heard from every inch of this community.
So with the backing of major family groups in Doomadgee, Barry started Gunawuna Jungai, an organisation that will represent the 18 different family groups here and have a say in the allocation of services.
And so it's an opportunity for us to really build a governance structure for the community that we can go to government and say, hey, this is how Doomadgee wants to do business.
Barry shares the enthusiasm for local decision-making, and unlike some others in the community, he's also optimistic about the upcoming voice referendum.
This is an opportunity to have a say, actually make a difference.
He's hopeful in time they both mean a healthier, safer community and less time spent here.
We come to the cemetery nearly all the time, mate. Maybe 3 or 4 times a month,
Today it's for the funeral of Shakan, a baby boy deprived of the opportunity to live a full life.
Sometimes our hearts are broken more when they're that age and size.
It's a generational thing that affects us then later on because we've lost someone so young. You know what? If I don't do the right thing for my grandson, well then what about the other people that's going to suffer later on down the track with their children? And children after that. It's this generation.